He walked away from the fire, but what happened next might end his entire season. Before I tell you everything, and I mean everything, about what really went down, I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because what started as a crash at Michigan has now turned into a story that could completely reshape the NASCAR Cup Series championship, and the name that just got confirmed as his replacement? Nobody saw this coming. Not the fans, not the garage, nobody. But real quick, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is where real NASCAR fans come for honest breakdowns. No fluff, no filler. We're pushing toward 15,000 subscribers, and the community we're building here is something special. If you love NASCAR, you belong here. Now let's get into it. Michigan International Speedway. Late in the race. The kind of moment that reminds every single person watching why NASCAR is unlike any other sport on the planet. Christopher Bell and Chase Elliott, two of the best drivers in the Cup Series right now, running side by side, fighting for second place on lap 148, just moments after a restart. This wasn't the back of the field. This wasn't a scrappy mid-pack battle. This was two elite drivers pushing absolutely everything they had, because in NASCAR, track position is everything, especially when the clock is winding down. And then, in less time than it takes to blink, everything changed. Elliott's car got loose. You could see it happen in real time. A small bobble, just a fraction of a second where the rear end stepped out, and suddenly, he had nowhere to go but up the racetrack. His car made contact with Bell's number 20 Toyota, and from that moment, the outcome was out of both drivers' hands. Both cars hit the outside wall, hard. We're talking nearly 200 miles per hour into concrete, the kind of impact that shakes your chest even through a TV screen. And then came the image that sent chills through every single fan watching. Fire. The rear of Christopher Bell's Toyota erupted into flames after the hit. Not a small flicker, not a wisp of smoke. Actual flames coming off the back of his car after absorbing one of the biggest hits of the entire season. When you see that, you stop thinking about points. You stop thinking about playoff standings. You stop thinking about anything except whether or not the driver inside that machine is okay. Safety crews responded immediately. The whole NASCAR safety system kicked into gear the way it's designed to. And then, the moment every single fan in that grandstand and watching at home needed to see, Christopher Bell climbed out of that car under his own power. Chase Elliott did the same. Two drivers, one massive crash, both walking away. That alone is a story worth telling. Because when you replay that footage and watch both cars absorb that kind of energy at that speed, walking away is not something you take for granted. Ever. But here's the part that nobody expected. Before the ambulance ride, before the trip to the infield care center, before any of the official statements, Chase Elliott walked across the infield to where Christopher Bell was standing, and the two of them embraced. No drama, no pointing fingers, no heated exchange. Just two professional racers who understood exactly what had just happened and respected each other enough to make sure the other guy was all right. That image said more than any press conference ever could. Christopher Bell was taken to the infield care center, and he wasn't in and out in 10 minutes. Bell stayed inside for nearly a full hour before finally being evaluated and released. Now, here's where things start to get more serious. And this is where I want you to really pay attention. Even after being cleared, Bell declined all interview requests. He didn't talk to media. He didn't give a quick soundbite. He just wasn't available. And for a lot of fans, that raised a question. Because if everything was fine, why stay silent? The answers started coming out in the hours and days that followed. Christopher Bell is expected to miss the race at Pocono, while additional medical evaluations are completed on injuries involving his wrist and ankle following the Michigan crash. Let that sink in for a second. Christopher Bell, one of the most consistent, most dangerous drivers in the entire Cup Series, will not be behind the wheel of the number 20 Toyota at Pocono. His wrist, his ankle, injuries that weren't immediately obvious at the track, the kind that develop and become clearer in the days after the adrenaline wears off and the swelling sets in. This is not a small deal. This is a big deal. And Joe Gibbs Racing moving quickly to confirm a replacement driver tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the team is taking this situation. The replacement driver, who has now been officially confirmed, is Leland Honeycutt Jr. Now, if you're a hardcore NASCAR fan who lives and breathes every series, every level, every development driver, you might know that name. But for a lot of fans watching at the Cup Series level, this name doesn't jump out immediately. And that's actually what makes this story fascinating. Leland Honeycutt Jr. is 21 years old. He's from Phoenix, Arizona, and he has been quietly building his career through the NASCAR ladder system the way most young drivers have to, with patience, development races, and waiting for an opportunity. His most notable NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series appearance came at Bristol Motor Speedway back in 2022 when he made his series debut with Young's Motorsports. He finished 22nd. Not a headline result, but a foot in the door at the national level. Since then, Honeycutt continued his development, competing full-time in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2024 before taking on a part-time role in 2025. And now, without warning, without a long runway of preparation, he gets a phone call that changes everything. You're starting at Pocono, in the number 20 Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing. Joe Gibbs Racing doesn't just show up to fill a grid spot. They show up to win. They show up to compete for championships. That is the culture at JGR, and it has been for decades. So when a driver of Bell's caliber is suddenly unavailable, it creates real consequences. Not just for one weekend, but potentially beyond it, depending on how the injury evaluations go. The team has to recalibrate. The crew chief has to adjust. The engineers have to work with a different driver who doesn't have the same familiarity with their setup, their communication style, or the feel of that particular car. That's a massive amount of adaptation in a very short window. And because NASCAR's playoff structure doesn't pause for anyone, every race genuinely matters. This isn't a situation where a team can just absorb a lost weekend and move on cleanly. Here's the flip side of this story, and honestly, it might be the most interesting angle of all. For Leland Honeycutt Jr., this is the kind of phone call that drivers spend their entire careers hoping to receive. Think about where he was just a week ago, running a development schedule, building experience, waiting for a chance to prove himself in front of the right people at the right level. And then, because of a crash that nobody planned for, that nobody wanted, suddenly he's stepping into one of the most recognizable cars in the sport, in a high-profile situation with every NASCAR fan watching to see what he does with it. That's pressure. Real pressure. Not the manufactured kind. The kind where you either rise or you don't, and everybody finds out which one it is in real time. The challenge for Honeycutt won't be winning. Let's be realistic about that. You don't parachute into a Cup Series race with 1 week of preparation and expect a championship-level result. The challenge will be composure, staying calm, communicating clearly with a crew chief he's still building rapport with, avoiding mistakes, learning the rhythm of a race weekend at the Cup level with an experienced team. Those are the things that turn a one-race substitute appearance into a career-defining moment, or a forgotten footnote. And stay with me here, because I'm going to tell you exactly what to watch for during his race weekend. Because there are specific signs that will tell you whether this kid has a future at this level or not. Let's address the other driver in this crash directly, Chase Elliott. There will be conversations. There always are after an incident like this. Social media will have takes. Fans will pick sides. That's just part of the sport at this point. But when I watch that footage, and I've watched it multiple times, I don't see malice. I don't see a driver making a reckless move or deliberately putting someone in danger. I see two elite racers going hard on a restart, racing side by side the way they're supposed to, and in a fraction of a second, physics took over. At nearly 200 miles per hour, there is almost no margin for error. A tiny bobble, a small slide, a split second of the car getting loose, and suddenly you're both in the wall. That's not a conspiracy. That's not a dirty move. That is NASCAR. And if you needed any more evidence that both drivers understood what happened, go back to that moment after the crash. The embrace. That says everything. Two drivers who could have turned this into a weeks-long drama chose to walk toward each other instead. That's class. And it's easy to overlook when we're all caught up in replays and outrage cycles. I want to take a moment here and give credit where it's genuinely due, because sometimes this part of the story gets buried. Both drivers walking away from that crash is not a coincidence. It's the result of years of safety development. The Hans device, the safer barrier, the improvements built into the next-gen car specifically to protect drivers in high-speed wall impacts. When you see a car hit the wall at 200 miles per hour and the rear catch fire and two drivers walk out, that's not luck. That's engineering. That's safety science. That's people in offices and garages and test facilities working on problems most fans never even think about. Does that mean everything is perfect? No. Does that mean every crash will have a good ending? Unfortunately, not. But Michigan was a reminder that the investment NASCAR has made in driver safety is real, and it matters. Now let's talk about what's actually at stake here. And I want you to understand why the next few days are genuinely important, not just for one race weekend, but potentially for the entire second half of the season. Christopher Bell's wrist and ankle concerns are the central issue right now. The honest answer is that nobody outside the Bell camp and Joe Gibbs Racing's medical staff fully knows how serious those injuries are. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes this situation so significant. Best case scenario, Bell's evaluations come back clean. His body responds well in the next few days, and he's back in the 20 car quickly with no lasting impact on his performance or his season. Worst case, the injuries are more significant than initially expected. He misses additional races, and suddenly, one of the strongest cars in the Cup Series is being managed without its regular driver during a stretch of the season where every single point matters. I'm not here to speculate on medical details I don't have access to, but I am here to tell you that this situation is worth watching closely, because the answer we get in the coming days will determine which version of this story we're actually in. Pocono Raceway is a unique challenge. The triangular layout, the three completely different corners, the long straightaways. It's unlike anything else on the NASCAR calendar, and it creates specific demands on a driver that make it particularly interesting for a substitute making his Cup debut. For Leland Honeycutt Jr., Pocono will be a test in multiple ways at once. He'll need to manage tire wear. He'll need to communicate effectively under race conditions. He'll need to survive traffic, restarts, and the physical demand of a Cup car over a full race distance. Here's what I'll personally be watching. First, his qualifying lap. How does he look on a single lap when there's no traffic and it's just him and the car? That'll tell you a lot about how well he's adapted to the setup in practice. Second, his restart behavior. Restarts at Pocono can get chaotic fast. How he handles those moments will reveal his composure. Third, how long he stays on the lead lap. If he can stay on the lead lap and avoid mistakes, that's honestly a successful substitute appearance given the circumstances. If he does any of those things well under the pressure of this situation, there will be people in the NASCAR garage paying close attention. Here's what I genuinely believe after looking at everything surrounding this situation. Christopher Bell's health is the only thing that actually matters right now. Not points, not standings, not momentum. The man walked away from a 200 miles per hour wall hit with his car on fire. The fact that we're now talking about wrist and ankle evaluations rather than something far worse, that's the real story. And I think Joe Gibbs Racing is making exactly the right call. I know some fans will look at this from a pure competition standpoint and feel frustrated. But a driver who isn't fully healthy doesn't just put himself at risk. He puts every other driver on that racetrack at risk too. You don't rush that call. You make sure the guy is right before you put him back in the car. On the Honeycutt side of this, I think people are sleeping on just how meaningful this moment is for a 21-year-old driver who had no idea a week ago that this phone call was coming. The NASCAR garage has always had stories like this. A substitute gets a call. Nobody expects much, and then something happens that nobody expected. Whether that's the case here, I genuinely don't know, but I know I'll be watching. And on Chase Elliott, I think the story ends at the embrace. Two racers, a scary crash, mutual respect. That's it. Before I wrap this up, I want to zoom out for a second and look at the broader championship picture, because this doesn't happen in a vacuum. Bell has been one of the drivers you have to factor into any serious discussion about who wins the Cup Series championship this year. He's been fast. He's been consistent. He's been dangerous on the kind of tracks that matter most when the playoffs get serious. Any interruption to that, even a short one, changes the math. It changes the momentum. It changes the preparation cycle for a team that operates at a championship level and expects to be competing for wins every single weekend. Joe Gibbs Racing will handle this professionally. They always do. But handling it professionally and handling it without any cost are two different things. There will be an impact. The only question is how significant that impact turns out to be. NASCAR doesn't give you a pause button. The schedule doesn't move. The points don't wait. And the opportunity window doesn't stay open forever. For Christopher Bell, the mission right now is recovery. Get healthy. Get evaluated. Get cleared. Come back when you're truly ready and not a moment before. For Leland Honeycutt Jr., the mission is simpler, but somehow even more intense. One race, one chance, one moment to show everyone in the sport who you are under the most unexpected pressure imaginable. And for the rest of us watching, this is exactly why NASCAR keeps us coming back. Because no matter what's happened in the races before this, no matter what storylines we thought were going to define the season, one restart, one split-second mistake, one phone call to a 21-year-old kid from Arizona can change everything. That's NASCAR. That's why every single lap matters. Now, what do you think? Do you think Honeycutt can surprise people at Pocono? How serious do you think Bell's injuries are? And what does this mean for the championship picture going forward? Drop your take in the comments right now. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know what this community thinks. If you're not subscribed yet, do it now. We are building something real here. Daily NASCAR coverage, honest breakdowns, no filler, no fake hype. Just real fans talking real NASCAR. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.